Guys, today we just got the Annie release card, so this should be very interesting. I saw some of the support cards the other day, and we'll be going over all of them and just taking a general look. So, let's jump into it.
Tibbers, it's playtime!
What good's power if you're not gonna use it?
Come out,
Alright, Annie. Oh, 1 mana. Whoa. Wait. Oh, this is so interesting. 1 mana. Attack, I deal 2 to my block. If it's dead or gone, I deal 2 to the enemy next. Whew! That's really good. Level up, I've seen you play 6+ fast spells, slow spells, or skills. So definitely just a very clear Jhin support. Except Annie has to see, which is tough. Because she's a 1-drop with 2 health. She counts for herself. That's really interesting. Because there's obvious Jhin synergy there because it's basically the same level up condition as Jhin. Except Jhin, of course, is you don't need to see it. So that's very interesting. Is Annie Jhin like the meant pairing? I'm unsure because in Noxus it's very hard to protect Annie. But maybe you don't really care that much. It's just a 1-drop that you can put in your deck for Jhin, and you gain part of a level up progress while still being a very good card.
That sounds like fun!
It's Mr. Kythero! Kai...
It's Kythera, Annie. Hey, Tibbers.
Oh, I wanna play! This way!
Yeah, so you get this like Ziggs-esque effect. Yep. It'd be cool if you could like give Annie challenge early on and it's just like this pseudo flame chompers that deals 2. That could be pretty decent as well. Oh, we saw this card getting leaked, right? But Ravenbloom Conservatory. 1 mana, landmark, countdown 10. Create something in hand. I advance 1 round for each of this thing you've played this game. Wait, what? I advance 1 round for every you've played this game. Oh, interesting.
Put down. Now I wanna burn you.
Oh, but it also works when you... Oh, okay, interesting.
First the smoke, then the fire, then the Tibbers!
So when I level up, create Tibbers in hand, attack, I deal 3 to my blocker and stun it. If it's dead or gone, I deal 3 to the enemy next instead. Oh, that's so cool, because what happens here is it will always proc the second ability, right? Because of the stun. So what happens here is it deals 3 to the blocker. If it dies, and then you'll deal 3. But if it survives, it gets stunned, and then you still deal 3 because it's just not there anymore. That's really cool. I want to see what the Tibbers is. And I want to see what the landmark gave. So this is the unit they got off the landmark, which is a 6 mana 6/6 overwhelm high bulk. When summoned, grant allies everywhere +1/+0 for the rest of the game. All of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. So this was off the landmark. Interesting. So allies everywhere get +1/+0. That's cool and all. And all your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage after you play it. I assume this is like a Zoe-esque effect where this is permanent. It's like a summon effect. Sorry, the better comparison would be like Herald of Magus, that once summons, it grants your champions +2/+2 and overwhelm everywhere. And then this does a very similar effect. So Annie would deal 4. Oh, and you can give her might. That's really cool.
Almost time.
Wait, did that not deal?
Did you like that, Tibbers? Wasn't it fun?
How does allies have overwhelm a new power? Hasn't that always existed? Annie's Disintegrate. What does this do? Pick a unit. The next time it takes damage this round, kill it. Whoa. Whoa, that's so interesting. So Disintegrate reads fast speed spell for 2 mana. Pick a unit the next time it takes damage this round, kill it. That's so interesting. This sort of breaks the rules of like Noxus things where it only kills, you have to kill like damaged units. So now like it dies when it takes damage rather than when a damaged unit takes damage or something along the lines of that. That's such an interesting sort of, it's like a pseudo defensive. I guess it can be used very aggressively as well. So like all of a sudden chump blocking or like trying to like this card is really interesting because all of a sudden like it's hard to like try to block Annie because then you could get disintegrated and then your big unit that you're trying to block Annie with just dies, or in the flip case, if you're trying to attack the big unit, you know, and you're fine trying to value trade in some chump blockers, you get really punished by this card. This is such a cool card. But every time I see a card like this, I'm just curious, is this a card I can main deck, or is this a card I'm just trying to find off a Conchologist? And that's sort of the vibe I'm getting off of this card. It looks extremely powerful, but its utility is so potentially niche that I'm not sure it's a card I want to run in like my deck. Maybe I run it with an Annie deck where it has such explicit synergy of being able to deal damage through like the skills and stuff. I guess it works with Jhin too, huh? Oh no, it does because Jhin only stuns. Never mind. That's so interesting.
They all fall down.
And then you can use Disintegrate aggressively with Jhin. Oh, here's what Tibbers. Tibbers, 6 mana, 5/5 fearsome. Play, stun an enemy, then deal 2 to all stunned or damaged enemies. Stun an enemy, then deal 2 to all stunned or damaged enemies. They're pushing a lot of this stun stuff this expansion, which is really cool. Because I'm a huge Yasuo fan. But stun an enemy, then deal 2 to all stunned or damaged enemies. So this is definitely like so this could be like the 6-shot Minotaur support, the one that says if you deal damage to any stunned or damaged enemy, like just kill them, which Tibbers could do fine. Otherwise, you get Tibbers off of the level up, you play it, you stun an enemy, then deal 2 to all stunned. So you're basically Mystic Shotting a unit and stunning it, and then you get a deal 2 to all damaged enemies. How easy is it to damage enemies in this deck? I don't know. A lot of things do this thing where it deals damage to stun enemies, right? You have Jhin, you have Tibbers. It's so interesting.
I want to play a game of hide and seek.
That animation's freaking sick though. This card though, the one that just scales, this card looks kind of nutty too. Let's get this 4-3 overwhelm.
You got a weird eye, Mr. Jhin. Smells like burning. Yeah, let's go make some more friends.
Oh, this is really interesting. So yesterday we got a few cards here. So we got Mana Soul Student. Each round, the first time you play a fast spell, slow spell, or skill, I play Ember or Magic Ember. So it's a 3 mana 3/2. What's really good about this is it's just super synergistic, right? So when you play a fast spell, slow spell, or skill, it creates another skill onto the stack. So essentially what you're doing every turn is you're just getting an extra stack onto your level ups for cards like Annie or Jhin. So while this isn't necessarily an engine because Magic Embers is it deals 1 to the enemy nexus, it's not really an engine, it doesn't give you value, but it progresses your cards like Annie and Jhin, and when you progress Jhin, you get the stun, right, or you get the deal 1 in the stun. And not to mention, if you get the tie bulk down, you know, Magic Embers deals 2, and then Jhin deals 2. It's like this, it's like this weird, like, mid-range burn deck. It's like the best way I can describe it. Now you're Noxus, so you can run Decimates and Fervors. But everything in here is sort of like this pseudo mid-rangey burn deck. You have Annie, you have Jhin, you have these 6 drops that ultimately change the way how the game works, like Tybulk and Tibbers. Tibbers a bit less so. Tibbers doesn't impress me as much. It's like a 6 mana Sentry, but you get to deal 2 to all stun or damage enemies, and sometimes it's like a half of a flock. So if you have like if your opponent has like a damage board and you can play Tibbers and clear it all, that's pretty good. But yeah, it's a weird archetype because it's like a slower burn deck. Like a 3 mana 3/2 is slow in relative terms. If you're playing like a Noxus burn deck, like this is pretty slow, right? I could see Annie slotting into like a championless burn deck because I think Annie by itself is pretty good. It's a 1 mana 2/2 that basically has quick attack. Wait, it's a 1 mana 2/2 with quick attack. It's nuts. That's actually kind of nuts. And there's like the synergistic aspect of it where it synergizes Mana Soul Student. But outside of Annie and like this, like a regular fast-paced burn deck, like this Mana Soul, I think this Mana Soul Student and this like Tybulk Ravenbloom Conservatory thingy is a bit slow in traditional burn, which makes this archetype just a tad bit strange to me because it doesn't fit in. It essentially creates a new archetype, or rather a new speed for the burn archetype, because it plays for like these engine cards like Mana Soul Student and Jhin, right? And maybe this Tybulk card. Spellslinger, play 2 mana 1/1 fearsome, play stun an enemy. If it's already stunned, deal 2 to it instead. So Arachnoid Sentry, but for 2 mana with a upside, or with a conditional upside. Very interesting. It's 1/1 stat line is going to be tough, but this is still probably a very good card. I don't know if this is like what fits into like this sort of spider deck, because it is a spider, interesting enough. But like its stat line's a little bit weak for a spider deck. I guess it does work with like the Skitterer. So potentially being able to stun a unit, then you play Skitterer could be pretty good because it is a spider, it gets buffed, and it is a fearsome. Its stat line is just a tad bit weak for more aggressive leaning decks. So I think there's going to be better options for this in like an aggressive leaning deck. In this Annie deck though, it's probably pretty decent because this Annie deck plays a little bit slower than traditional burn, is at least my initial assumption. So that's a little bit interesting. The Prefect, I think this card is like very, very interesting because this is a 3 mana 1/3 overwhelm. When you play a fast spell, slow spell, or skill, grant me +1. So this scales, right? You saw in the clip that it had like 14 attack as a 3 mana unit, but you have to be on board to see it, right? So it comes down as a 1/3, so it doesn't scale in hand like Vi, or like it doesn't come down level like Jhin. So you have to see them, which means that you do need to play this early on, and then it scales over time. So this card's not as good as I initially hoped it would be, but if you can like keep it alive, like you stun the blocker, you can get some pretty fearsome like stat lines on this card, which is kind of interesting. But again, right, like this card is definitely just as it's like anti-support card. It reminds me of like a pseudo Crescent Guardian in Targon, the Nightfall card, which is a 5/3 overwhelm. It reminds me very similar to the speed that it wants to play, but potentially this is maybe a little bit slower because of it takes a while to scale up, which puts this archetype in just a very interesting speed, right? It's definitely an aggressive slanting deck that has a lot of abilities with burn, but it's just not as, the units aren't as fast or aggressive, and you have these 3-drops, right? A lot of burn decks don't really have that many 3-drops, especially ones that you want to keep alive and are engines. So this definitely opens up some interesting sort of space, which I find quite curious, because this is sort of a new, it's taking the traditional identity of Noxus, which is this aggressive burn style of deck, but it's creating a different speed for the archetype, which I think is a really interesting concept when it comes to game design. So that's the cards for Annie. Were there any other cards yesterday? No, and then these are the 3 cards. So this is any support card, or the support deck. So curious. Oh man. Is any good? I think is the last question we should ask ourselves right now. Any baseline 1 mana 2/2 quick attack. That's essentially what she reads because she deals 2 damage to the blocker. Except she can't block very well. Not as you were trying to block with Annie. It's interesting. I think Annie is just a very good card overall. In like a burn aggressive style of deck, you're not really blocking with any of your units anyways. And because Annie is a 1-drop, I think that's a huge premium. So Annie herself on a pure stat line is, I think, very good. It's very flexible. You don't... It's like Ziggs, right? You could play this in a pure burn deck and not really care. Like, if you're playing Vandal Burn, like, maybe it's Annie plus Ziggs. Like, you just cut out Gnar because Gnar's a little bit slow. I wonder. In, like, a championless burn deck, I think Annie is probably good enough to play as, like, your 1-drop. So that could be interesting. Annie definitely, like, is meant to be played in this, like, Ravenbloom Jhin deck. With, like, Mana Soul Student. And that's a little bit more interesting. So I'm unsure how I would rate, like, an Annie Jhin deck, because its speed is, like, slightly slower because you don't get a run. No, that's not true. Annie Jhin might be, like, slower, might just be the, like, it's like a burn deck, right? But then, like, it's slower than regular burn. But allows you to play Annie Jhin and then PNZ Noxus burn in a lineup? Interesting. I don't know. The next thing, I don't know. The speed is interesting. I think it definitely has to come down to just playing it and getting a feel for it. Because Annie might just be like the standalone champion they just slot into a burn deck. Very similar to Ziggs in like Vandal Burn. And you don't really work for the level up, and you don't really play too much of this like Annie support stuff. But let's say you do play the Annie support stuff. Leveling up Annie is going to be really difficult because it is an I've seen and only has 2 health. So you have to play it, realistically, you have to play it in a region that has protection spells. So whether it be like Freljord or like Ionia. If you do level up Annie, she deals 3 to the blocker on attack and has like a 1/3 stat line. Tibbers is a questionable game ender. I don't rate this Tibbers card very highly. I think it's cool and all, but it's a little bit slow. Like 6 mana is like slow. It's 2 weak statted. It's a 6 mana 5/5 fearsome. And its play effect doesn't end the game, realistically speaking. Because if you're playing Tibbers on turn 6, you're likely not you likely don't have other stun enemies, and it's just dealing 2 to damage enemies. Unsure about how common that's going to come up, or how common that's going to like actually kill your opponent's board to like prevent them from blocking. I don't know. Maybe with Jhin on board, this stuns another enemy, and then this deals 2 to another enemy, and maybe put some other spells and skills on sack. This whole, like, I've seen you play fast spells, slow spells, and skills is a very interesting concept to me, because it's so hard to evaluate. It depends on how you build the deck. It depends on how fast the deck is. It depends on if you have Jhin on board. It's so interesting. But Tibbers doesn't impress me as much. And then Bulk for the Ravenbloom Conservatory. Oh, I see. So now I understand this card. So it has countdown 10, and then it advances every time you play a skill. And of course, countdown on round start. You have to play this early on, which is weird because it's a do nothing, right? So like if you're playing this aggressively scented deck, you don't want to play a 1-mana landmark because you could play a 1-mana unit, right? So the speed of this deck again is just coming into question. Where it's like this mid-range burn deck. Bulk I think is a fantastic. Bulk is a much more impressive finisher to me than Tibbers is. Because it changes how the rest of the game, right? Your allies gain +1 everywhere, and then the rest of the game, your spells and skills deal 1 damage. I think that is very, very good. And potentially even in like a tempo deck, potentially play this like with Static Shock, and Static Shock deals 2. It's like a permanent and Funsmith, right? It's pretty interesting, and has a decent stat line as a 6-mana 6/6 overwhelm. The rest of the package, the Mana Soul Student, the Prefect, I think are solid cards. It depends on how strong this Annie mid-range burn deck overall is. But it's very interesting, again, because of the reasons that it creates a new speed for the archetype. So I'm definitely very excited for this, because I think that Annie has a good flexibility as a champion. I'm just curious to see how the style of a Noxus deck will perform, because I think that's very interesting in the speed that the deck is playing at. So that's just all general thoughts of Annie herself. Again, very interested. Jhin and Annie definitely seem to have the more interesting deck building concepts as well as packages. So definitely very excited to try these out when the expansion hits. Let me know what you guys think as well down below in the comments, and I'll leave you guys there. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please do leave a like, subscribe if you do enjoy the content. And I really appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow for another video, potentially, if there's another spoiler. We'll see. No promises. See you guys next time.